The Life and Death of Charlie Kirk, A Nation's Fractured Mirror. Welcome to SPS. Today we are forced to confront a story that is as much about the life of one man as it is about the death of something larger in American life. Charlie Kirk, the incendiary conservative activist and founder of Turning Point USA, was shot and killed yesterday at the age of 31 while speaking at Utah Valley University. His death was sudden, violent, and horrifyingly public. But to understand its significance, one must first understand the complex, contradictory, and fiercely influential life he led. On the surface, Kirk's story is a classic American tale of entrepreneurial hustle. A high school Republican from the Chicago suburbs who started an organization in his parents' garage and built it into a political powerhouse, leveraging social media and populist energy to become a kingmaker for the MAGA movement and a direct ally to a President 25. But as with so many things in modern America, the surface narrative is quickly complicated by the deep and turbulent undercurrents of polarization, conspiracy, and political violence that Kirk himself both navigated and helped to amplify. To understand what his life and death truly represent, one must ask, was Charlie Kirk a visionary who gave voice to a silenced generation, or a prophet of division whose rhetoric ultimately contributed to the very climate that claimed his life? Let's be clear. Kirk's influence was undeniable. From its founding in 2012, Turning Point USA grew under his leadership into a behemoth, boasting over 1,000 campus chapters and millions in donations from conservative mega-donors, too. He was a master of the new media landscape, commanding a combined social media following of over 20 million people across platforms 8. His daily podcast and radio show were downloaded hundreds of thousands of times daily. However, Kirk's rise was also marked by controversy and allegations of demagoguery. He was a prolific promoter of falsehoods and conspiracy theories, from COVID-19 misinformation to claims of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election, too. He promoted the anti-Semitic cultural Marxism conspiracy theory and described universities as islands of totalitarianism, too. His financial dealings with Turning Point USA also came under scrutiny. Reports revealed his salary ballooned from $27,000 to over $300,000 as the organization's revenues soared into the tens of millions, too. For his detractors, he was not a truth-teller, but a charismatic salesman for a dangerous and divisive worldview. And that leads us to the central, uncomfortable question that hangs over his assassination. In a nation increasingly fractured by its own internal hatreds, can the violent death of a polarizing figure ever be anything but a prelude to further violence? The circumstances of his death are still shrouded in confusion and contradiction, a metaphor perhaps for the man himself. What we know is this: Kirk was sitting at his Prove Me Wrong table, an outdoor forum where he debated students when a single shot rang out, striking him in the neck 46. Videos show him recoiling, blood pouring from the wound as the crowd screamed and fled in panic. 6. The shot is believed to have come from a roof some 150-200 yards away, from a figure dressed in dark clothing captured on low-quality CCTV 13. The security, by all accounts, was shockingly lax for a figure of his prominence. Despite a crowd of 3,000 people, there were only 6 uniformed officers on duty, and attendees reported no bag checks or metal detectors 47. In the aftermath, the official response has been a study in dissonance. FBI Director Kash Patel initially announced a subject was in custody, only to later announce that person had been released after interrogation 14. Utah Governor Spencer Cox insisted a person of interest was in custody and called the killing a political assassination. 36. Yet the state's public safety commissioner simultaneously stated the suspect was still at large. 7. This chaos reflects a nation struggling to process an event that feels both shocking and, in the context of recent years, terrifyingly inevitable. And herein lies the paradox of this moment. The same digital ecosystem that Kirk mastered to build his influence, one of viral clips, algorithmic outrage, and performative debate, has also coarsened our political discourse to a breaking point. Between 2016 and 2025, there were 25 partisan-motivated attacks on officials and government employees. a staggering increase from just 2 in the 2 decades prior. 1. Kirk A.'s death is not an isolated incident. It is the latest, most dramatic escalation in a rising tide of political violence that has included 2 assassination attempts on former President Trump, the killing of a Democratic state lawmaker in her home, and the attack on Paul Pelosi, 17. This creates a stark, tragic irony. Kirk built his brand on confrontation, on owning the libs and fiery campus debates. He believed he could change minds through conversation no matter how heated. 3. Yet his death suggests that in today's America, the space for such dialogue may be vanishing entirely, replaced by the absolute, violent silencing of the gunshot. Furthermore, this assassination cannot be divorced from Kirk's own recent ideological evolution. In his final years, he increasingly framed politics in apocalyptic spiritual terms. He embraced the Seven Mountain Mandate, a Christian nationalist movement calling on believers to exert dominion over all aspects of society. 36. He described his fight not as a political contest, but a spiritual battle for the soul of civilization. 3. This rhetoric, while energizing his base, also paints political opposition not merely as wrong, but as evil, a dangerous framing that can dehumanize the other side and create a permission structure for violence. So, what happens next? The world has reacted with uniform condemnation, from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to Italy's Giorgia Meloni. 1. In the US, leaders from across the spectrum, from Trump to Biden to Obama, have denounced the violence and offered prayers. 67. But will this moment, as some hope, be a catalyst for national introspection and a lowering of the temperature? Or will it become a rallying cry, a martyrdom that further deepens the divides Kirk so expertly navigated? The life and death of Charlie Kirk is a dramatic and profoundly American story. But it is not just his story. It is a reflection of a nation at war with itself, a warning of where hyper-polarization leads, and a test of whether American democracy can still find a way to debate its future without resorting to violence. For that future to be secured, our conscience must be blind not only to partisan affiliation, but to the seductive and dangerous belief that political opponents are enemies to be destroyed. Until then, the death of Charlie Kirk will be remembered not as an end, but as a terrifying turning point.